ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
welcome
ਜੀ ਕਾ
everyone
ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
welcome everyone to another episode of the Khalis Podcast, a platform to share the work and thoughts of both aspiring and established writers, poets and artists who are passionate about preserving and furthering Sikh and Punjabi heritage and identity. Today, I'm joined by Rajbir Singh Sovereign to speak about his debut book, Khyaal, a poetry journal, which was published by Khalis House on the 21st of February 2025. So we'll get into the book in just a moment. But just by way of quick introduction, Rajbir Singh Sovereign is a storyteller, filmmaker, and observer of life's quiet moments. With a deep appreciation for thought and reflection, he weaves words into emotions, creating poetry that resonates with the soul. When he's not writing, Rajbir explores the beauty of everyday life through making films and sharing stories and encourages others to embrace their unique journeys. So, Rajbir Singh, welcome along to the Khalis Podcast. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
Fateh.
ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ Thank you for letting me join.
No, thank you for joining me. So I thought I'd start with just a very kind of brief, kind of background, asking you about, how you became a writer, a filmmaker,
ਹਾਂਜੀ
even, how did all of that begin? And then we'll come
ਹਾਂਜੀ
on to the books. If you want to just start with that.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ So first it was all started with filmmaking actually. It started with my bachelor's degree in film. So I started with that, and when I started the course ਨਿੱਕੇ ਹੁੰਦਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ I used to enjoy making films and looking at Punjabi films, looking at Sikhi films as well. So I started ਛੋਟੇ ਹੁੰਦਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ like Vismad. They used to create those cartoon films in
ठीक
Sikhi.
है. Yeah.
And by Taru Singh Ji ho gaya, that's I used to really enjoy that because there was no certain representation for us otherwise most of the
Okay.
time. So and then basics of Sikhi came in as well. And like growing up, when I went to the course then itself, I started like, okay, I want to do these kind of things myself as well. So it started with filmmaking. So I started making documentaries about films. I started making documentaries. The first thing that I documented was Sikhs in the Netherlands. So Bella Sikh Garnasi, who was the first Sikh to come here? What did the Sikhs do in the First World War here, Second World War here? Who was the
ठीक है.
first Dutch person the Sikhs saw in Punjab as well? We documented everything and we checked all that out and we made a whole video and it's on YouTube as well. So that's how it basically started, and then smaller projects. Me going into actual filmmaking when it comes to fiction films. So I started writing my own films as well. So that's basically where the writing started to happen a little bit. But when it comes to poetry itself, I think I never like about achanak ho gaya siga. It wasn't like planned or anything that I was gonna do writing as a I don't call myself a poet. I'd rather say storyteller most of the time, but some people say otherwise, so it's a bit difficult to sometimes give myself a category. But it started most of the push, the last drop of like, okay, I'm gonna write something was the Kisan Andolan.
ठीक
ਜਦੋਂ
है.
ਉਹ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਇਆ, then I was like, okay, because I was busy a lot here at the protest on this thing. I used to go there and document the protests. And then I was like, okay, there may be other ways as well of documenting this in a personal perspective ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ and I started with the poetry and I just wrote it down. I wasn't that good in Punjabi as well, so ਜਿੰਨੀ ਮਾੜੀ ਮੋਟੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਲਿਖ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਤੇ that led to actually sparking something up inside of me that I'm like, I enjoy this. Like I'm enjoying writing like
Right.
this. Like okay, ठीक है ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਏਦਾਂ ਲਿਖਣਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵਧੀਆ ਲੱਗ ਰਿਹਾ. Of course, Gurbani helped inspiring, and at that moment as well, there was a lot of songs. I used to listen to a lot of ਧਾਰਮਿਕ songs ਹੋ ਗਏ ਜਾਂ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਗਾਣੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ. Especially for me, Musiala was something that I'm like, Banda knows how to write. And it was like, okay, if he can write without using drugs or alcohol or Janania in its reference in his songs, then why can't we as sings? Like
Mhm.
he's still getting there as a sing. We are ready, like Amratari and stuff as well. Why can't we do
Right.
that, Hannah?
Right.
So that led for me to go into writing and Harley Harley Vadadai gaya. ਪਹਿਲੀ poet ਲਿਖੀ ਦੂਜਾ ਲਿਖਿਆ and then it started to grow as well and I started to put clips out on YouTube of just poetry about random things ਜਿਹੜੇ like even the book now itself is called Khyaal. If I hear that word Khyaal, it goes back for me 3 years ago.
Okay.
ਕਿ like ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਦੋਂ ਆਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਕਿ like oh ਏਦਾਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ. We see a lot of things in the world and there was a choice in life ਕਿ like okay ਨਹੀਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਚੁੱਪ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਬਾਣੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਨੀ ਆ and then ਆਪਾਂ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਆ. But I was like okay that was also a way for me but sometimes that used to clutter the mind a lot ਕਿ ਜੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੱਢ ਸਕਦੇ. ਆਪਾਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਆ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਚ but that's basically it. And then I did a benti to Maharaj as well, like, is there other way that I could continue this? And then I think from my feeling, Maharaj gave me writing. Like, haan, theek hai. I started to write. The जिन्ना प्यार मिलिया मैनू ते जिन्ना आप मेरे तो बाहर आ रहे सीगा the emotions were all kind of मन हल्का हो रहा सीगा कि like okay जो तू सोच रहा जो तू कहना चाहता ਉਹ ਤੂੰ ਲਿਖ ਕੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ it's not like we're having मैं debate नहीं कर रहा लोगों ਨਾਲ argument नहीं कर रहा जो मैं लिखना चाहता चाहे ਉਹ ਇਨਕਲਾਬੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ peaceful ਹੋਵੇ ਜੋ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੇ I can write it I put it out as a journal I see my content more as a journal for myself ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕੀ ਲਿਖਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਲਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ so that's basically how it started to give out my khayal like ਅੰਦਰ ਨਾ ਰੱਖਾਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਕੱਢਦਾ ਰਹਾਂ energy as well I could say ਹਾਂਜੀ
Sure. But yeah, no, thank you for that. I think you mentioned a few things there. You mentioned we'll come to the book in just a second, but you mentioned there that obviously you're based in the Netherlands,
ਹਾਂਜੀ
and you kind of started that journey by documenting, life, I guess, for Sikhs in the
ਹਾਂਜੀ
Netherlands.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
When was that video first made?
that wow I think that video was made in 2019 yeah 2019
ठीक है,
क्योंकि
so 6
उस
साल हो
समय
गए.
तो
Okay.
हाँ जी and then it started to continue as well in film so I made my first short film then after that
Right.
and that helped me because ख्याल ਜਦੋਂ मैं पहले बारी आया ਸੀਗਾ filmmaking च I wanted to make a feature film every filmmaker has a dream like okay
Yeah,
पूरी
of
film
course.
बनानी I want to make a
Yeah.
feature film so when I even entered the school मैं सिद्धा टीचरां ਦੇ ਹਿੱਕ ਤੋਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਬੱਚਾ I was like मैं full film बनानी है हुणी and they were like no wait 1 second
That's not how it works.
fulfill
Yeah.
your course and then
Mm.
of course we'll see as well okay, like how you're progressing and I always used to my teachers used to tell me कि like जो भी तू कर रहा we don't know how but you always find a way to just tell your own story within our rules कि like ठीक है पास भी हो रहे हैं पर आप ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਵੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਰੱਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਏਦਾਂ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰੂਲ ਹੀ ਇੰਨੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਰੱਖ ਦੇਣੇ ਕਿ ਬੰਦਾ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਭੁੱਲ ਹੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ you don't know what to tell anymore because they give you so many rules ਕਿ like ਇੰਨੇ ਮਿੰਟ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ you need to film with that camera you can't do this you can't do that but Maharaj Kirpa we still always find a way to represent kind of Sikhi in this kind of way ਹਾਂਜੀ
Amazing. And so that was in the Netherlands. You studied at
ਹਾਂਜੀ
university there. Okay.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
Tell us about generally the Sikh experience in the Netherlands. What's it like? How, in terms of Sangha? Obviously, I've been to the Netherlands. Came to
ਹਾਂਜੀ
see you guys a few years ago.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
To tell our listeners and the viewers, how things are for Sikhs in the Netherlands.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ at this moment I think when I made the documentary itself it was around 10,000 because it's been a few years and we got a lot of IT students coming here as well IT ਵਾਲੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਵੀ IT ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਬਹੁਤੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਆ so we've seen in the ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ the main ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ that we go to as well ਕਿ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀ ਆ like ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀ ਆ IT ਵਾਲੇ student ਕਾਫੀ ਆ ਗਿਆ so I think we're going maybe to 15 or 20,006 around the Netherlands ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਆਪਾਂ documentary ਕੱਢੀ ਸੀ we had 11 ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ and now there've been 2 added no actually there's 1 added and now 1 is being made extra as well
Right.
so ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ being added so you definitely know ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਵੱਧ ਰਿਹਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਵੀ ਵੱਧ ਰਿਹਾ and it's not like they're all close by to each other no it's like all around the country you can see new gurdwara opening because there's Sikhs there so ਗਿਣਤੀ is less at this moment, but you still do feel like a good impact. कि हाँ support हैगी आ. There are Punjabis here, there are Sikhs here, and we can see them around us as well. For the rest, my experience myself, yeah, because ਸਾਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਘੱਟ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ primary school, high school, uni, work, you're always going to be the one to represent. You'll always be the first. So ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਾ ਆ, and that gives a good feeling, but sometimes also a daunting feeling. Like, okay,
Mm.
are they gonna have the right representation? ਤੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, it's been good. You have a nice feeling like, ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਆਵੇਗਾ, you will have a better experience than us. So we always used to have presentations कि जिथे भी जाना, primary school हो गया, high school हो गया. Sometimes one time a year we used to do a presentation. Sometimes it used to be just like, okay, 3 साल बाद क्योंकि साडे course ही इन्ने लंबे होते सीगे.
Mhm.
So that's why we used to have like presentations to show like, okay, this is what this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is who we are in the Netherlands itself. So that's why when I came into the course as well later on, I straightly went into Sikhs in the Netherlands because there was no online representations at Devaste. So like
Right,
now,
right.
if you would type out Sikhs in the Netherlands, you would find the documentary. Maharaj Kirpa.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, amazing. Because I think like living in the UK, the Sikh experience is different because Sangha Jadaya. Like in
Hanji,
most
Hanji,
of the cities and towns you go to,
Hanji,
especially down south in like South or Birmingham, it's like a mini Punjab, right?
Hanji,
But I guess for
Hanji,
you guys, especially in the Netherlands and maybe even like other areas in Europe as well, perhaps there's less Sangat. So
Hanji.
that must be a completely different experience. And I know you travel to the UK often as
Definitely,
well, so
Hanji, Hanji,
you probably
Hanji.
see that. Yeah.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਫਰਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਦਿਸਦਾ ਉਦਾਂ ਵੀ ਯੂਰਪ ਦੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਦੇ ਕੰਟਰੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਯੂ ਸੀ ਸੱਚ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਇੰਨੀ ਘੱਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਟੱਕਰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਲਾਈਕ ਪੂਰਾ ਮਨ ਕਰ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ oh wow we saw a
Right.
Singh just now in a few
Sure.
minutes ago and there
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
UK it's like yeah 10 ਮਿੰਟਾਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕੋਈ
Hi,
ਮਿਲੀ
Hari.
ਜਾਂਦਾ ਆ
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see
Every
it
corner you
10
turn.
minutes exactly you see a Singh but ਉਹ
Yeah,
ਵੀ like it's not a bad feeling it's a very different feeling I would say ਕਿ like
sure.
ਸਾਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ that
Mm,
even when you're in the UK you don't have to you rarely have to explain something to anyone about
mm,
us because it's already there. And here
mhm.
where we go, we have to explain because then it's going to be easier for the person coming after it.
Right, right.
Hanji,
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the book then. So like I said, so Khyaal was published on the 21st of February this year with Khalis House. Tell us, you made reference to it already a little bit there in terms of the journey into poetry from
Hanji.
filmmaking. But tell us when you first decided that you'd like to present the book in this format because it's a collection of poems, but there is also space for people
Hanji,
to add their own thoughts down. So it's also
Hanji,
a journal. So when did
Hanji.
that idea first come about?
That idea came from mostly from social media. When I started to post my poetry there, I used to see कि like कई बार ऐसा हो जाता ਸੀਗਾ कि ਲੋਕੀ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ poetry 'ਚ. So I was like, okay, people want their space as well
Mm-hmm.
to write themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to me giving out a collection, because I don't think like when I listen to my own poetry as well, when I read everything out, I don't think it's like in one line. I think it's quite spread. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਇੱਕ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੇ ਕਦੇ ਟਿਕਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ so I was like okay this is a good way to express myself like okay just as our dimag is that's the kind of book I'm gonna give out that's not just on one topic जो भी तुसी लिखना चाहो तुसी वो लिख सकते हैं if you want to go khilaf the poetry if you're like I totally do not agree with what you're saying you have your own space if you do agree and you want to go like okay this is how I'm feeling about it you have that space as well
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen people actually funny enough I've been getting some DMs that are just using as a diary
Okay.
ek poetry पढ़ के and they go to the next one and they just write down what basically happened in the day and sometimes the poetry and their daily thoughts match so well that they're like, oh, it's like
Mm-hmm.
surprising for them sometimes.
Right. Okay. Okay. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, it's quite unique in that sense because we've published poetry books before and they have just been poems.
Hanji,
And sometimes they're divided up into different sections depending on the themes that emerge from the poems. But this,
Hanji.
obviously, like I said, is unique because you've got the poem on one side and you've got space for individuals to write down their own thoughts, so it does become a
Hanji.
journal. What were your thoughts about kind of some of the themes that you touched upon in the poetry? Was it something did it just kind of naturally come about as you were writing, or did you think, right, okay, I'm going to write specifically about these themes for this particular publication?
I think for me it was like ਜਿੱਦਾਂ journey ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਈ ਆ ਮੈਂ ਉਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਇਆ so
Okay.
sometimes ਜਿਹੜੇ like ਪਹਿਲੀਆਂ poetryਆਂ ਉਹ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਪਹਿਲੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਆ. And
Okay,
that's how
okay.
I continued throughout the book. So basically showing a journey as well, like, okay, I think as well when you're reading the book, I read it myself as well, and I was like, the way you go through it, your own depth of your own damag will go more deeper and deeper. So that's what we take throughout the book as well. ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਡੂੰਘੀਆਂ ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗ ਪੈਂਦੇ ਆ ਕਿਤਾਬ
Yeah,
'ਚ ਵੀ.
okay,
Like the
okay.
poetry sometimes gets longer as well, as
Hmm.
you've seen yourself. So that's what happens ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਵੀ ਆਪ ਡੂੰਘੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ. We start to understand ourselves more. So that's how I kept it like, okay, let's have a flow that we're going more into our own thoughts and actually knowing why I'm thinking certain things.
Right, right. Okay, okay. And was there any particular inspiration for writing it in this style, or did you just want to, present it as a reflection of your own kind of journey almost, and do
I
something
think
unique?
this came kind of like from filmmaking. We always used to have lessons like, okay, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਚੀਜ਼ represent ਕਰਨੀ ਆ, you have kind of a wave of emotions.
Right.
Sometimes
Okay.
you have the up, sometimes you have the down, and then you have an up again. So that's what I try to do as well. That sometimes, okay, in the poetry book itself, you see very ਡੂੰਘੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ and sometimes ਕਾਫੀ ਹਲਕੀਆਂ, just like ਤਿੰਨ ਲਾਈਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰੀ poetry ਮਗਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, and you just feel good after reading. You're like, okay, this is a good
Right.
feeling poetry.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do as well. Like, okay, let's give that kind of feeling. And that came from filmmaking. Okay, okay, emotions. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ emotions ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੇਲਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ, but you want to give them an experience when they're reading. It's like, oh,
Right, right.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
Okay, okay, amazing. Would you like to share a poem for our listeners and viewers?
I can share. ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਹਾਂਜੀ.
Yeah, maybe one of your favorite ones, or one that perhaps has maybe a deeper meaning, and maybe you
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
can go into that.
1 second. I think this one is quite nice. ਕਿ ਰਾਜਬੀਰ ਸਿਆਂ ਤੂੰ ਕਿੰਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਰੂਪ ਬਣਾਈ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਹੈ. ਕਈ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਆ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ. ਕਈ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਆ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਚੁੱਪ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ. ਕਈ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਗੁੱਸੇ 'ਚ ਤੂੰ, ਕਈਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਪਿਆਰ 'ਚ ਤੂੰ. ਜਦ ਤੂੰ ਹੱਸਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਨਫ਼ਰਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਵੈਰੀ ਤੈਨੂੰ. ਕਲਮ ਤਾਂ ਆਹੀ ਆਸ ਰੱਖਦੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਤੂੰ ਹੀ ਤੂੰ, ਤੂੰ ਹੀ ਤੂੰ, ਤੂੰ ਹੀ ਤੂੰ.
Okay, so that poem is called Perception, right?
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
One thing I should have mentioned actually at the beginning is obviously the poems are in Punjabi, but
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
you've also then put the Roman transliteration and also then the
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
English
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
translation as well. So and
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
this is so the poems on one side and you've got the space for the Khyaal.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
So yeah, so tell us a bit about this poem then.
Um, for me, when I wrote it, I could see like there's so many different ways of people are perceiving me in different ways. Like एक तो हो गया social media का character, एक तो परिवार का character हो गया,
Mm-hmm.
एक तो दूजा बंदे वास्ते हो गए ਜਿਹੜੇ सिर्फ like ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਚ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਦੇਖ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ like ਉਹ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਇਆ, that's it. So
Sure.
alag group because I still go to many gurdwara when I'm invited to document anything like an event ho gaya. So they
Right.
have a very different perception because then I'm kind of, you could say, working. I'm
Mhm.
doing something. So ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ. So ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਪੂਰਾ ਅਲੱਗ character ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਚ, of course, I'm still the same person,
Of
but
course,
like
yeah.
just perceiving it is very different.
Right. Right,
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
right. Yeah. Because obviously we build, different relationships, right? With
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
different people, like you said, based
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
on, what it is we have in that relationship.
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
And I can relate to that because especially as like as a father, as a family man, I've got
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
maybe the perception my children have of me, my partner, and then then obviously there's the sings, and then there's those who read and interact with my work.
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
So
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
I think it's a really kind of deep poem
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
in on that front. Um, in terms of so you've spoken a bit about the kind of the inspiration behind it and how it relates very much to your experiences from filmmaking, and that's obviously a passion of yours. What if someone who's reading this book, what do you hope that they can take away from the book? What would you like them to take away from it?
ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮਨ ਹੌਲਾ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੇ ਕਿ like ਜੋ
Mm,
ਸੋਚਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਏਦਾਂ ਨਾ ਲੱਗੇ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਮੈਂ ਹੀ ਸੋਚ ਰਿਹਾ.
mm,
Sometimes we have quite dark thoughts that we're like, oh, ਇਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਦੇ ਹੀ ਆ. But I've
mm.
started to learn as well when I've started to post on Instagram that we're not the only ones. You're not the only one who has these dark thoughts, or sometimes even these very light thoughts. ਕਿ like, oh, ਸੂਰਜ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਆ, ਏਦਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਵੀ like ਕਈਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਸੂਰਜ
Mhm,
ਸੋਹਣਾ ਆ.
mhm.
But then when I started to post, it was like, okay, there's differences as well that you're like, no, ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਕਿਤਾਬ 'ਚ ਹਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ we all have certain thoughts. Sometimes people think about one thought a longer time and we think about it in a shorter time. But most of the time you'll have some kind of thoughts that will match. ਚਾਹੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਖਿਆਲ ਤਾਂ ਕਦੇ ਕਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਚ ਹੋ ਹੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ. So I
बिल्कुल
think that so that we could cross over basically. Um and yeah, kind of be less harsh with each other
yeah
as well in that kind
yeah
of way. I think there's one poetry as well where we talk about people being overweight and the dark skin. We have that poetry in the book as well. Like all of these kind of things, like ਇਹ ਬਦਲਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਵੀ ਕਿ ਲਾਈਕ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਵੇਖੀਏ ਜਾਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਪੂਰੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਜੱਜ ਕਰੀਏ. So that's what I'm trying to do. And as I think getting people into writing,
right
because I've seen such a nice feedback for myself towards writing that I'm like, oh, it's such a positive feeling.
mm.
So yeah, getting people into writing. Because I've they done yeah, like, oh, RP Sochila. No, I was getting that feedback a lot because when you see these comments, you're like, you guys need to be writing yourself. Didn't even to comment on there. I was like,
Mhm.
you guys need to be writing yourself. So it was more of a mocha to give a mocha to the readers to start
Yeah.
writing themselves.
Okay,
Anji.
well, yeah. You mentioned there like some of the kind of themes that the poetry touches upon, and I think there's a lot of talk, in today's day and age about the kind of the importance a journal can play, in someone's own kind of path towards healing or towards being a better person,
Anji.
kind of because what writing does is it gives you a way to express the
Anji.
the emotion that you're feeling because obviously it starts off as a thought, but that can
Anji.
manifest in different ways. So that's
Anji.
one thing I really liked about when you sent the actual proposal over, the fact that it
Anji.
was this hybrid, that it wasn't just the poetry, that I think the
Anji.
journal, in many ways, I think the book actually is so unique because it's a hybrid, because the poetry is very profound and deep in places, and then
Anji.
you also have you're leaving something else with the reader, like you're almost
Anji.
putting it into their hands that you can you do with it what benefits you, and I think
Anji.
that's such a beautiful thing because it's not then just a book for them to read, but they
Anji.
can actually engage with it.
Anji.
Beyond, like for example, if you give someone like a fiction work or even a non-fiction work, they can scribble on it, they can make their
Anji.
notes, but this is
Anji.
like an invitation more so for them to actually, get into it.
Dive into Anji. I think this is what I learned from other greater filmmakers as well, is like when they used to create films, they used to like ਉਹ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਫਿਲਮ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਹੋ
Mm,
ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ. So I think
mm,
that's kind of flown into every work that I have ਕਿ like ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਬਾਹਰ ਕੱਢਣਾ ਆ as a creative person, it's
right.
not yours anymore. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਮੋਹ ਵੀ ਹਟ ਜਾਂਦਾ. It's better. ਤੁਸੀਂ
Mm,
ਐਨਾਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਰਹਿ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਕਿੰਨੇ
mhm.
ਫਾਲੋਅਰ ਵਧਿਆ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਨਹੀਂ. You just
Yeah,
go like to the next thing. ਉਹ
right.
ਫਲੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਵੱਧਦੇ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਆ. ਜੋ ਨੰਬਰ
Mm,
ਆ ਗਏ ਤਾਂ ਵਧੀਆ, of course you happy
mhm.
about it ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਲੋਕੀ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਏਦਾਂ
Mm,
ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਲਾਇਆ ਆ ਇਹਦੇ ਤੇ
mhm,
ਸਿਰਫ ਮੈਨੂੰ 5 ਹੀ ਵਿਊ ਆਏ ਆ, ਲਾਈਕ
mhm,
ਉਹ
mhm.
ਹਟ ਜਾਂਦਾ basically.
Okay, okay, that's amazing. What sort of response have you had then, generally speaking? It's been, 3 weeks since the release,
ਹਾਂਜੀ
at the time of recording this podcast.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
How have people engaged with you following the release?
Of course, people have seen it on Instagram, some of the poems that we have in the book. So that's like a nice feeling from them. Like now we have it physically in our own hands. So I'm getting a lot of screenshots, people tasveeran page. They are aapke cheejan likh rahe hai, but that's gonna start, I think, slowly, slowly. I haven't started to promote that a lot, but I'm getting things in of people just sending me pictures of what they've written as well. I'm
Wow.
like,
Okay.
wow, that's crazy to see that as well, because of course that was kind of the goal to get them started to write.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's basically what's been happening. And I'm getting people tasveeran ke like, oh, book aa gaya. And from various countries that I'm like, I didn't even know that it could reach there. Austria, Dubai. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not overwhelming, but it is quite surprising. Like, oh, okay, to see what TV yeah. So it's
Very-
a very different experience to see all of these books and photos coming in, and I'm like, okay, this is a great feeling that okay, we're doing well, basically, Hanji.
yeah. No,
So I
that's
think it's
amazing
morely
because
just coming in, Hanji,
yeah.
slowly, slowly.
Yeah, that is amazing because like you mentioned earlier about how social media, everybody's on social media, everybody has something to say, and it
हाँ
can
जी,
become a little toxic at times where you're just commenting on someone's post or you get into someone, have a debate with whatever. But the way in which you've written this book, it's almost like you're putting the ball in their court. If you have something to say, or if this particular
हाँ
poem can
जी,
help you process, like I said, a particular emotion or a particular go
हाँ
through a
जी,
particular situation
हाँ
in
जी,
that way, it's so unique. So it's so commendable that you put this out there, and it's actually
हाँ
people
जी,
have it now in their
हाँ जी,
hands. And the fact that you're receiving these responses from
हाँ जी,
Dubai or wherever
हाँ
is
जी,
testament, to showcasing how important this.
हाँ
Because
जी,
I've always said like how important it is for us, especially as Sikhs, just to write. Writing is
हाँ जी,
such a big part of
exactly,
our culture, a big part of
हाँ
our
जी,
history.
हाँ जी,
So you're giving the Sangat and the wider audience something practical that they can actually
हाँ जी.
use. Yeah.
Funny enough, I've totally forgot one thing actually. Someone has read one of the poetries on a funeral.
Wow.
हाँ जी,
Wow.
I think if I'm right, it's what कुछ तुर गए ने, कुछ रह गए ने, और पूरा हो गया कह रहे ने. I think it's
Right.
that
Right.
one that
Yeah.
they've said it on someone's funeral, and I was like, oh wow. You
Mm,
don't
mm.
expect it to be like
No. No.
read out like that. Of course, ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ, of course, we know ਕਿ like ਇਹ emotion ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿਆ ਆ, ਪਰ ਕਦੇ
Mm,
ਉਹਦਾ effect ਨਹੀਂ ਵੇਖਿਆ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਿ like oh ਇਹ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਏਦਾਂ affect ਕਰੂਗਾ.
mhm.
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that also kind of, demonstrates the importance of writing.
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
Sometimes, like I know I do this sometimes even now. It's like I will sometimes I'll have an idea and I think, what's the point? I'll just maybe come to it later on or whatever. But
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
actually, just writing it down at that moment, you never know, where that idea might
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
might actually
exactly.
go.
That's so
Might
true.
get expressed. Hmm.
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
Yeah, yeah.
बिल्कुल.
Um, what advice would you give then, coming on towards maybe the end of the podcast, to those who are maybe in that situation where they're thinking about writing or they have a bunch of ideas and they maybe don't know which one to go with? What advice would you give someone who's aspiring to become a writer?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, I would say just start. ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ
Mm,
ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਚ ਹੋਵੇ, ਹਿੰਦੀ ਚ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਹੋਵੇ, just
mm,
start. ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ language ਉਹ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ, when you're wanting to write, just write it.
mhm,
Because sometimes we put a lot of pressure to like, oh, ਕਈ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ the message ਭੇਜ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ. I get DMs ਕਿ ਭਾਈ, we're not like you yet. I'm like, I'm not even I'm not even that myself, so I don't know
mhm,
why you're saying it to me, है ना? But yeah, I would say if you just start, you progress yourselves. That's
mhm,
the way it should be. Don't think you're gonna be Shiv Kumar Bhattacharyya or any like big
mhm,
poet straight away. Although
mhm,
they नहीं होने लगा है, they have their own process. उन्होंने कितने साल लाया, आपा
mhm,
हजे day one तो शुरू हो रहे हैं.
mhm.
So it's I think it's yeah, start. I think
So,
for most of us it's just starting, and second of all is I would say create more than you consume.
okay.
Sometimes we have this perspective that I'm seeing a lot. I have it myself as well sometimes. ਆਪਾਂ ਇੰਸਟਾ ਤੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, TikTok ਤੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ consume ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗ ਪੈਂਦੇ ਆ, and then ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਖਿਆਲ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, you don't know where they're going. It's just there. It's just like a big bunch and it's just dropped somewhere, and you're not doing anything useful with those khayal itself. So I would say, yeah, create more. If you want to be a creator, of course, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਲਿਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ, I would say ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹਰੇਕ ਦਿਨ ਟਾਈਮ ਬੰਨੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਿ ਅੱਧਾ ਘੰਟਾ, like even 15 ਮਿੰਟ ਜਾਂ 5 ਮਿੰਟ, depending upon how fast you write yourself.
Mhm,
I would say start writing. Give yourself time to write. That's
mhm,
why even in Khyaal, like that's the way I started as well. कि like हरेक दिन कुछ ना कुछ लिखना है.
mhm.
Basically, it became a journal for the day. So
Right.
some of these poetries that we have in the book, they're written on a daily basis. कि
Okay.
like आज आ महसूस होया, आज आ महसूस होया, आज आ महसूस होया. And of course, सादी जिंदगी आ, सादी जिंदगी च up and down तो आउंदे ही रहंदे आ. So some of these poetries went like totally like this, but
Right.
then they still have like an happy side as well. And I think
Sure.
that's quite important. The one I want to give to the audience as well. Okay, like always have a perspective of like happiness is a perspective. ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ
Mm,
ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਫੁੱਲ ਪਿਆ ਆ and ਇੱਕ ਪਾਸੇ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਪਿਆ, ਗੰਦ ਪਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ, it's your choice why you gonna look. ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੁੱਲ ਵੱਲ ਦੇਖਣਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੁੱਲ ਵੱਲ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੰਦ ਵੱਲ ਦੇਖਣਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੰਦ ਵੱਲ ਵੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ. So I think in your writing, you should always try to reflect that as well. Like even if a poetry is very sad, always have like one line just for yourself. ठीक हो जाना, ठीक
mhm,
हो जाना. Ja ਏਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੁਝ. That's what I try to do in my poetry as well. I never end a poetry, especially because I know like someone else is gonna read it or someone else is gonna listen to it. I
Mhm.
never try to end it in a dip kind of emotion
Right.
wise. I always try to give like some kind of hope in the end. Like
Yeah.
even if the whole poetry is just like, okay, facts, 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 this is what we
Right.
feel. But in the end, I'm gonna be like, this is just a perspective.
Mm.
Like we can
Mhm.
flip it in 1 second if we want to,
Mhm.
basically. So I think
Mhm.
that's important ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ like ਇੱਕ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਰਹਿ ਜਾਈਏ ਕਿ like ਉਹ ਦਿਲ ਟੁੱਟਿਆ ਆ ਜਾਂ
Mhm.
ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਆ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਪੂਰਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ or
Mhm.
your life is going in a dip because you don't have any finances, something like that. There's
Mhm.
always a perspective to like, हाँ ठीक हो सकता. And I think that's
Mhm.
for me, that was the best way writing helped me. ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਲਿਖ ਲਓ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਵੀ ਲਿਖਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ then you're like ਕੋਈ ਇੰਨੀ ਮਾੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਵੈਸੇ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੋ ਹੋ
Mhm.
ਰਿਹਾ ਆ ਇਹ ਠੀਕ
Mhm.
ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ ਵੈਸੇ ਇਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ
Yeah.
ਸਮਾਂ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸਮੇਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੀ ਆਪ ਡੂੰਘਾਈ ਚ ਲੈ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਆਪਣੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਚ ਇਹ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ ਆ that's what we say as well Gore scientifically sometimes prove that if you have a problem to solve and if you write it down ਅੱਧਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹੀ like ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ problem ਤਾਂ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ it gets solved
Yeah.
basically ਹਾਂਜੀ
Yeah, that's the power of writing. You know, when you were speaking there, you just reminded me of something which I read from Professor Pooran Singh about like the he's talking about like Eastern and Western poetry and writing poems, and
ਹਾਂਜੀ
he says that he kind of compares and he says that what the Eastern traditions generally speaking have, which he has not found in the Western poetry, is that the Eastern poetry is all about giving life. You know, you mentioned there about like leaving something on a positive and a bit of
ਹਾਂਜੀ
hope, because
ਹਾਂਜੀ
that's what the kind of Eastern traditions, generally speaking, he's making a
ਹਾਂਜੀ
generalization. That's what they
ਹਾਂਜੀ
do.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
And so I wanted to ask you very quickly also about the decision to write in Punjabi. What BISE or were you when you had these initial thoughts, did they come in Punjabi and then you wrote them down? Or did you consciously think, I want to create something in Punjabi and then give the English translation?
I think it came in Punjabi at first of all, because of course it
Okay.
was connected to the consultant to be Punjab GC.
Pika,
So,
right.
but yes, of course, because I live in the West myself, it was like having English subtitles will help a lot, especially for me as well. Like sometimes when I used to write a poetry in Punjabi and I used to write the subtitles and I used to look back at the Punjabi part, like, okay, there's something iffy that's not working structure wise.
Right. Right.
So that helped. And I think, yeah, most of it just came in Punjabi. Hanji.
Mhm, mhm.
But
Okay.
it was
Okay.
also depth.
Right.
Also, मैं depth same delivery नहीं कर सकता सीगा. If I wanted to deliver in English, I wouldn't be
Right.
able to give the same depth towards that basically.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
started to write now a little bit in English, but
Yeah.
still sometimes I feel like it's just dull. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's the fault of the language. I think that's just my fault of not understanding the language that much as I understand Punjabi emotion
Mm.
wise.
Yeah.
Hanji.
I probably maybe offer a different perspective in the sense that I think it's very difficult to bridge that gap because from my experience, ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਆ or when you listen to something Punjabi, um, the emotion, that just the feeling you get just from the boli, from somebody speaking about, they could be speaking about something very mundane, right, everyday thing, but
Hanji.
there's that shakti, there's that power in the boli as
Hanji.
well. And I think
Hanji.
we resonate with that. So even though we
True.
live in the West and on a day-to-day
True.
I'll speak English, we're having this conversation mainly in English.
Hanji.
But when you hear it in Punjabi, there's something that is almost inexplainable. There is, and whether it's that connection to the Maboli, whether it's connection to our heritage, our tradition, our
Hanji.
history, maybe it's all
Hanji.
of those things, because we're
Hanji.
we're still part of that collective. So for me, as I always find it like, for example, if I was to read when I read the novel of Rani Sadako in Punjabi,
Hanji.
it was a completely different experience to
Hanji.
when I read the English, which obviously I wrote. But
Hanji.
there's certain things I think you just can't. There's certain heights I don't think you can hit in the English
Hanji.
language, and that could be,
True.
it could be our own individual,
Hanji.
shortcomings. But I
Hanji.
think there's so much depth and so much beauty and
For
power
sure.
within Punjabi,
For sure.
which is why I
Hanji.
liked how you presented it in Punjabi as
Hanji.
well.
Hanji.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that myself. That's why I always used to think as well, like that same depth I won't be able to hit in English as well. And I don't like when I'm listening to anything Punjabi, Gane ho gaye, poetry hogi,
Mm,
Gurbani as well. When we're reading that, it's like, but when you read the translation, you're like, oh. Okay.
Mm,
There's not
yeah.
like a huge impact you can make even in the
No,
translation.
no.
ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਉਹ impact transfer ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ. So like
Okay,
even when people say like, oh yeah, you can read the translation of Gurbani, it's never going to be the same feeling.
mhm,
Never.
mhm. Yeah.
I've
I mean,
realized that as an experience, Hanji.
yeah, the way I would kind of describe it is that the English will give me the facts, it'll give me the information. When I
Hanji.
read the same thing in Punjabi, it genuinely gives me the feeling. Like you
Hanji.
get goosebumps, you ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ
Hanji.
ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਹਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ
Hanji.
ਰਿਹਾ whether it's Gurbani or not, but just general
Hanji.
Punjabi novels or literature,
Hanji.
poetry even, you just I think
Hanji.
there's a deeper connection there. Yeah.
Hanji.
Um, is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of upcoming projects, anything you're working on?
Hanji. Funny enough, actually, today I'm gonna do a performance, first time.
Oh wow, okay.
And I'm gonna do a performance of the poetry itself. It's gonna be I'm an opening act with Tahzeeb Havi, is Pakistani poet,
Okay.
and ਉੱਥੇ Amsterdam 'ਚ ਹੁਣ show ਲੱਗਣਾ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ. That's where I'm gonna
Okay.
do some of the
Oh
poets,
wow.
even from the book as well.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that's the first time me performing. Of course, I have done poetry in front of people, but this is gonna
Right.
be like my first performance. Like, okay, I'm
Okay.
gonna be
Oh,
standing with a
amazing.
mic in front of everyone.
Right.
So that's something new. And for the rest, when it comes to filmmaking and poetry mixed, I'm making a film, and Manoj Kirpa is being released in summer, hopefully this summer.
Okay.
I think I showed you a trailer as well in the past.
Yes. Yeah.
It's been refined. We've been working on it. That's been a long process as well. And actually, funny enough, the way poetry came into that film is crazy in my head as well. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਖਿਆਲ ਸੀਗੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਅਸਲ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਚ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਲਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ transcribe ਕਰ ਲਏ ਸੀਗੇ and I'm quite happy about that as well. So yeah, films, and yes, there are some other surprises as well working in that film that I'm gonna be doing songs.
Right.
I'm gonna be
Okay.
trying to do songs in the same way I can deliver poetry, because I
Right.
think it's a new door to open. It's very different writing way songs. Of
Mhm.
course, when I'm writing my poetry, I'm not focusing upon any rhythm. I just say out the
Mhm.
lines the way they feel. But when it
Right.
comes to music, you need to have a melody, and it's very different. Okay, Obi has an impact on the writing,
Right.
and I've seen
Okay.
that myself. कि ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ मैं ਵਰਤ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹ मैं बहुत सोच समझ के वरत ਰਿਹਾ कि like ਇਹ fit होना है melody ਜਾਂ नहीं.
Right. ठीक है.
It's just gonna
Okay.
fit in the rhythm, and that has impacted my own writing as well. Like now when I'm writing poetry, I'm like, if I apply the same thing of music to my
Mm.
poetry,
Mhm.
it's a different feeling for myself. So
Okay.
Hanji, I'm
Okay.
going towards music. I've been trying to go towards music, Hanji.
Okay. Okay. So in songwriting, the melody comes first, and you have to then kind of structure the
Hanji,
actual
Hanji,
words around that. Okay.
Hanji.
Okay.
Of course,
Okay. That makes
sometimes
sense.
it depends. Like I write any song first without anything because it just has to be feel.
Right.
But then when we go towards the melody, I still have to rewrite.
Right.
Of course.
Okay.
Or it's
ठीक है.
like repeating some lines that like, okay, our line repeat karni hai, our line nahi repeat karni. And some people do it totally differently. They go towards the
Okay.
studio, they hear the beat, and they write towards the beat, which
Right.
I
ठीक है.
find very crazy for myself. Yeah, I haven't reached that level that I'm like, I can write to just
Right.
anything that comes like
Yeah.
music wise.
Yeah.
But I've seen writers myself were sitting in the studio and they just write, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
Hanji.
awesome. Okay, but yeah, well, good luck this evening. Obviously,
Yes,
this
thank you.
podcast will be out after this evening.
Hanji. Hanji.
Will it be recorded? Can people watch it afterwards? Will you be
I
sharing it?
think I'll have someone filming me there, yeah.
Yeah.
Hanji.
Okay.
I'll post
Right.
a real thing, I think, about that, Hanji.
Okay.
I'll
And if you
post
can
my
just share
experience.
your social media handles, we'll put in the description as well.
Hanji. Most like every social media platform is Rajbir Singh Sovereign, Hanji.
Perfect.
YouTube, TikTok, Insta,
Yeah.
बाकी दे जेरे हो गए सारे पास Rajbir Singh Sovereign ही है, Hanji.
Okay. Well, yeah, ठीक है. Okay.
Hanji.
Okay, Singh. Well, thank you for your
Yes,
time today.
great. Thank you,
So
buddy,
it's
for
been a
having
pleasure.
me.
It's been great catching up. It's been a while since
Yes,
we've spoken as well.
definitely, Hanji.
So it's been good catching up. We'll stay in
Hanji.
touch. And for those who are listening again, and watching, the book is available. The journal is available
Yes,
to order from khalishouse.com, but also various Amazon markets around the world. So you can head over to Amazon and grab yourself a copy. Highly recommend it. It's a great, it's so unique. I think that's the biggest thing that I would say for it. Yes, the poetry in itself is beautiful, it's very profound, and you've shared some of it today. But the fact that you have this space and you've thought about the reader, I think is yeah, just it's so admirable. So yeah, do check it out. You can pick up copies, like I said, from khalishouse.com or Amazon. So thank you once again, Singh,
Yes.
and all the best in your future endeavors, and also this evening especially.
Yes. Thank you, bhai.
Okay, ji. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਜੀ
ਜੀ
ਕਾ
ਕਾ
ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ
ਜੀ
ਕੀ
ਕੀ
ਫਤਿਹ
ਫਤਿਹ।